Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Elections 2023 is Caliphate push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Since the 1999 Constitution came into use, concerns have been raised by individuals and groups who believe the Constitution is not a product of wide consultation and shouldn't start with we, the people of Nigeria. How then can Nigeria get a constitution it can call its own? And who are those expected to open the discussions on the renegotiation of the current 1999 Constitution, which has been considered by many groups as the main cog and the wheel of Nigeria's progress? This is the Eastern Eye. I am Alex Obodo. Welcome to the Eastern Eye on Afia TV, where we x-ray the political, social, and economic developments around us. Holes have been picked in the current 1999 Constitution, but what really is wrong with the document? Can it be remedied, and by who? My guest tonight is Tony Nnadi. He is a legal practitioner and Secretary General of the Lower Niger Congress LNC and co-convener of NINAS, Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination. Thank you so much, Tony Nnadi, for joining me on the Eastern Eye tonight.
For having me. Welcome, viewers.
All right, so is Nigeria's core problem a dysfunctional constitution arrangement and not leadership?
Precisely. Imposed, fraudulent, and totally dysfunctional constitutional arrangements. That is 100% of the problem. And the leadership that we have, the leadership deficits and the dysfunctions we have seen are directly, caused by that constitutional arrangement that cannot, produce any better leadership. Same for the corruption we see and all the other dysfunctions we see around. That Nigeria is where it is today is on account of that imposed constitutional arrangement.
So typically then, if someone is asking for the Constitution to be renegotiated or recalibrated, now why would someone really call the 1999 Constitution a forgery?
Yes, I have a copy of the document here, and I'm sure most of our viewers will have either the hard copy or the soft copy. It's actually on the internet. If you click 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, something is likely to come up. And so you go to the preamble that says that we, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible, indissoluble country, then it goes down to say, do hereby give unto ourselves the following constitution. There are three fundamental lies, three foundational lies that are contained in that, in that preamble, and that is what renders the entire document, the fraud it is, because the authors of the document also told the story of how they came about the document inside the document. Decree number 24 by Absalom Abaka, that's of 1999, told the story of how they came about the Constitution. They said they set up a committee that went around, to some, of course, they would have been sitting in hotels and beer parlors, probably with their men Friday and girlfriends if they wish. And so they came up with what they brought back to the Armed Forces Ruling Council of the time. That's Absalami's Supreme Military Council in quote. And that Armed Forces Ruling Council added to subtracted from the report that was brought back by that committee, Nikki Toby was the name of the head of the committee. The bottom line, the important thing is that constitution making is the exclusive business of those who are going to federate. Like the memo and articles of a company is the exclusive business, is the exclusive, prerogative of the shareholders, the promoters, the people who want to set up company. Mr. A, B, and C are coming together to form XYZ Limited. That coming together, that agreement to come together to risk their assets and their names, in a venture they may call XYZ Limited. That is the first part they call the memorandum. Then the articles of association is the second document that they draw up after they have agreed to form, an enterprise, a corporate entity by name XYZ Limited. And so, as it is for the company, so it is for the country, that the constitution is the exclusive business of those who could otherwise have been countries of their own. The Yoruba would be a country of 60 million people plus. The eastern side could be a country of 70 million people plus. If Biafra had a state, it probably would be in excess of 70 million people, bigger than most of the countries of Europe of today. And the same thing with the Middle Belt and all the other components. But if they are going to form a union, which is what the constitution is supposed to be settling, the question of being in a union and the question of the terms of the union, because it is in that terms of the union that you will now see the formations in which they are going to relate, whether they're going to be a union of 4 regions or a union of 10 states and all that, whether they are going to have 1 tier or 2 tiers of government, which is where you now see unitarism and federalism, whether they're going to have most of the powers loaded in the center or in the federating units. And what Nigeria, the multi-ethnic nature of Nigeria was what compelled the decision in the 50s as discussions were happening towards independence. It was the multi-ethnic, multi-religious composition of Nigeria that informed the decision by the founding fathers to agree to be a federation. And all those things got toppled, Nigeria was stillborn because it was the independence election of 1959 that led to all the troubles for which Awolowo ended up in prison, and there was a breakdown of everything. And then the soldiers came in January of 1966. The counter coup leading to the fracturing of the 4 regions of the time that were the federating units. They had the constitution, they had their own constitutions ahead of the federal constitution that they went to agree upon in Lancaster House. So where we are now is that from that 1966-67 toppling, because it was by 67 that they now fractured the 4 regions into 12 states, progressively to 19 states when Murtala Mohammed came, and further to 24, 30, and now we have 36 states, which was no longer a product of anybody's discussion. It was now the people by military, the soldiers who were in power, who had seized power, who had hijacked the sovereignty of everybody, that were imposing these instruments by fiat, by decree. And so they wobbled on to 1979 when they codified all of what they had done by decree, since after they abandoned the constitutions that federated us. Nigeria ceased to be a federation since 1966, effectively, since the counter coup of 1966. And what we still have a country in place. And this false claim that first happened in 1979 and carried forward in 1990, and that we the people, it is in that context, it is in that sense of who is it that has the power, the exclusive jurisdiction over that subject matter to make constitution. All right. Right. It is in that sense that the constituent components of Nigeria are saying that their sovereignty has been hijacked, and a constitution has been imposed without reference to them that has now rendered them slaves in their homelands. All right.
If I may, ask a question again, you are demanding a transition from constitutional for a constitutional renegotiation. Then who should be on that table where that renegotiation should happen?
You know, like doctors who do, you go from diagnosis to prescription and then to the treatment. The prescription must be based on correct diagnosis. The treatment must be based on correct prescription, in that order. And so the diagnosis that NINAS has done of what has gone wrong with Nigeria, in which Nigeria is the worst example of everything good. Poverty capital, the capital of crime, such that a gang of criminals have now we are now under state capture, and all kinds of everything you could think, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Our diagnosis is that it is from that point where the sovereignties of the constituent components got hijacked by this illicit federal government, because you couldn't have a federal government if you do not have a federation. Nigeria ceased to be a federation from the point where the federating constitutions were jettisoned by military intervention and fiat and replaced by, again, military fiat, the last of them being Decree number 24 of 1999, which they labeled the 1999 Constitution. So the people who have to now rework their union, it is basically to say we either dissolve the union now that everything has failed. You can see people are dying all over the place. People are in misery. There's danger. We face kidnappers are on rampage. The Fulani conquest agenda that has been there all the time, has gone to a new height. You saw what's going on in Plateau. Between the last time we spoke, we were here last week looking at this aspects of this same issue. Between that day and now, I'm sure you've heard all of what has happened everywhere around the country, such that Ibrahim Bangida will say that if nothing is done quickly enough, that soldiers may take over. Then the Sultan in Sokoto was saying that if food is somehow the matter is not arrested by any means possible, that people are going to pour into the streets from the north, and that means there could be a total breakdown of law and order. And you can't tell people who are hungry and dropping dead on the streets that they are dying, as in dying to be buried on account of not being able to fend for themselves because of what politicians are doing in the name of governance. But it is this constitution that is at the center of everything that has included the free fall of the currency, the free fall of everything, the killings, the insecurity, the infrastructure that is in decay, the people that are running away from the country that's like a burning house. And so it is the constituent components of Nigeria, now aggregated under the aegis of Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, that has rallied the people towards what they can do to recover their country, to recover their union, such that those in government house are not actually our quarrel is not with the people in government house. Our quarrel is with the constitution by which they've ruined everybody's lives, by which they've hijacked our sovereignty and our economic assets and all the rights and powers to organize ourselves, our security, our elections, our infrastructure, our everything. And so we have for 24 years since the imposition of this constitution in 1999, gone step by step of calling everybody concerned, because everybody was at everybody's throat all the while, and we didn't want anarchy. We said, Ijo, why are you blowing up a pipeline of shell? They say, we don't know how our oil and gas became the property of people we didn't discuss with. We sat down with them and showed them how it was done and persuaded them to put their guns aside for a while to come along. The same thing in the eastern side. The same thing with the OPC of Ghana Dams. The same thing in the middle belt, which you see how it's all proceeding now. So we were able to bring these constitutional grievances, these grievances that have become issues of contentions on the streets across the length and breadth of Nigeria. Even those who are doing, even the one you call Boko Haram in the far north. Look at this map. The 12 states that imposed Sharia simultaneously in year 12 contiguous states, from Sokoto Kebbi all the way to Borno and Yobe on the other side, they imposed Sharia simultaneously and they are contiguous. And so we say that Sharia that they wanted, for which they toppled the secular constitution, the secular arrangement we thought we agreed upon at coming to independence. What is the difference? How am I to make a distinction between that Sharia that they imposed by due process? They went to House of Assembly, the governor signed into law, they formed the Hisbah and started dislocating people from the place who don't adhere to that. How am I to make a distinction between what they were looking for and what Boko Haram that now declared that it is Sharia or nothing that they were looking for? And so we say that having come to that point where it looks like everybody has abandoned the union everybody agreed to be in, have been, by the actions of some elements across the union, been lost. The union is no longer there because we agreed to be a federation. We're no longer a federation. And what is a federation in the sense we are discussing? A federation is a union of constitutions, a union of sovereignties. You bring your sovereignty, I bring my sovereignty. We're talking about land and people. Sovereignty is simply about lands and people that will form union for the purpose of what we are discussing. And so we submitted our sovereignty on account of having to be a federation with autonomy levels in which Awolowo could decide what he did in Western region. Emma Wara could do all of what he could do in the East. Ahmadu Bello and co. did what they could do in the North with their own assets, driving their own development. And so when for some reason you topple all of that and you become the owner of everybody, that is what has happened to Nigeria. The management, which is what the government is supposed to be, the three arms of government are just the management team for Enterprise Nigeria. But the owners of that enterprise and who sit at the apex of the authority line are the peoples of Nigeria. Therefore, the right to make welcome everybody once more. The reason we get on these town halls every week these days is to interpret to us what is happening around us and to inform us about the things that are being done concerning those things that are happening. Whether it is the Fulani that is invading and killing in the numbers we hear, overrunning communities, kidnapping 287 pupils in one sweep, killing all over Benue, beheading traditional rulers in Ekiti areas, chasing Ijo around the oil fields and accusing them of stealing little quantities of crude or destroying their refineries and killing people. These things are being done by an entity called the Federal Government of Nigeria. The Army, the Police, the Air Force, the DSS, everything you see happening is being perpetrated by an entity called Federal Government of Nigeria. If we think of the situation in terms of land and control of land, like an estate, when you hear that Nigeria should be an estate of great grandfather, the one Ahmadu Bello was saying in the week of independence in 1960, just take yourself out of your circumstance, like one who is going up into the sky, high into the sky. Look at Nigeria as one estate called Nigeria, Estate Nigeria. In that estate, there's a Yoruba plot, there's an Ijo plot, there's an Igbo plot, there's Beron plot, there's a Edo plot, there's Tiv plot, Kanuri plot, Ogoni, and an Efik. That's the constituent composition of that estate. You can draw the lines around their boundaries. Now, the title deed, somebody owns that estate. Somebody owns that estate. That estate, the ownership begins with the constituent component lands and peoples. Yoruba owns Yoruba land, Ijo owns Ijo land, Ogoni owns Ogoni land, Edo owns Edo land, Igbo owns Igbo land. You go back to 1914 when the British, without talking to any of us, fenced everybody in and set the rules of how things will go there. That was when they began to implant their own agents that will manage that estate for them
for their own business interests, for their own national interests. They were sovereignty sitting on our sovereignty, because as long as we own the land and we are distinct ethnic nations on those lands, our sovereignty was already with us. It never went anywhere. It was only suppressed by the sovereignty, that is the superimposing force. And from that instrument by which the 1914 amalgamation was executed, that became the title deed over the entire estate, spelling out what will happen. They turned it all into 3 administrative units you call the regions. They began to tell what the federal government, or what the governor general will do, and what the deputies in the 3 regions would eventually. In the 50s, it became something of a federation. That was what they agreed in 1954, to say we can only be one political union if we're a federation. In all these things, all the way from that 1954 McPherson and to 1960 Lancaster House, it was all a matter of agreeing these components that could have been countries of their own, if not for some agreement to be one political union. It could have been, the North would have been one country of their own, the Yoruba would have been a country of their own, the East would have been a country of their own. By the time the Midwest, got cut out of the Western region in 1963, they could have been going off as a country of their own, like Pakistan cut out of India. But in all of it, there was a big hand that was holding it together. Didn't want it to become different countries. Continued to manage it from outside, in a manner that you didn't see that hand. Those who want to identify that hand and the mechanism by which that hand is managing and manipulating their affairs in Benin, their affairs in Makodi, their affairs in Ibadan, their affairs in Port Harcourt, defining the ownership of the economic assets, the land upon which you stand does not belong to you. Since the title deed, the Constitution is the title deed. The Constitution that is supposed to be a union agreement has been toppled from what we agreed and replaced by something that was unilaterally imposed by a section of the country that wants to conquer the rest and own the land permanently. Go back to how Ahmadu Bello put it in 1960. So you can understand the danger you are in. There are people coming from 16 different countries, armed, and you cannot touch gun, because the title deed by which they are managing that entire estate, the title deed by which they are holding and managing that entire estate, the title deed that makes us one political union, that constitution already listed what you can do, what you cannot do, what you own, what you don't own. Your economic assets belong to that entity that has toppled the original arrangement we made, because the original, like you heard for in the intro, the original arrangement that brought us together as one political union was one in which we were going to be a federation. A federation is like independent countries that could have been on their own, now cooperating as one political union, like we have in Europe, Germany, France, Portugal, Spain, and the rest of them cooperating as European Union. But in that European Union, Germany is in control of its affairs, generating its electricity, organizing its security, doing its infrastructure, organizing its own elections. That was the kind of union we agreed to be in those 10 years leading to 1960. But by the time in 1966-67, the soldiers came to settle this kind of brigandage the politicians are doing now. That was what brought the soldiers to come to say it can't continue. They were not actually coming to govern. They just wanted to rearrange the whole place, bring back Awolowo that have been put in prison for winning an election, the independence election. That was all they planned, but they didn't get through because people stopped them. And then down the road, on the 27th of May in 1967, you see the kind of false narrative they're throwing all over the place. it was on the 27th of May in 1967 that the four regions federating, the four regions that federated as the Federation of Nigeria, were fractured into 12 states, and the economic assets and the powers of those regions confiscated by that the illicit federal government that emerged, because you couldn't have a federal government if you no longer have a federation. By the time the 5 constitutions were toppled, Nigeria ceased to be a federation from that May of 1967. The first narrative that thrown all over the place, we have somebody talking about Igbo blame. Nigeria is dying now because they were chasing the Igbo to kill the Igbo. It was the British that turned the coup of January 1966. It was the British. I'm sure you've heard it from several quarters, including the one certain Ijo compatriot was saying on video. It was the British that turned what happened on January 15 in 1966 into an Igbo affair. It wasn't an Igbo affair. Ademoyege was not an Igbo man. Major Ademoyege that wrote the book Why We Struck. He wasn't an Igbo man. He was one of the 5 majors that decided it was time to go to stop the politicians from continuing in what they were doing. Then from that time it was called Igbo. Hiroshi emerged the head of state simply because he was the head of the army at the time. He was listed to be killed along with the politicians. Somehow the intelligence got to him and he managed to escape by whiskers. They already surrounded this place, but there was an underground tunnel from which he left the place. But in the decree number 34, the one they call unification decree, for which reason he was accused of truncating the federal arrangements we had. Decree number 34 only created administrative some kind of governance in place of the chaos, because the federal government had been decapitated. Two of the 4 regions, their governments had been decapitated since the premiers had been killed. And so what Hiroshi did with decree number 34 of 1966 was mainly to get the military administrators he had appointed in the 4 regions to work with him as the coordinator. Together they formed the Supreme Military Council to take over the functions of the defunct government and the parliament of the time. Just a temporary measure to stabilize the place before they begin to think of how to get back to any kind of organized governance. The 4 regions were still 4. That was why he appointed the 4 governors. Usman Kasina in northern region, Fajui in western region, Ojuku in eastern region, and Ejo in midwestern region. It was the 4 regions still had their constitutions. Their economic assets still belonged to them fully. Nothing changed in all of that until that point in 1967, when on account of the continuing killing of the Igbos in the pogroms, just the genocide, that the eastern region came under such pressure as to now draw the line so that those who had not been killed will not be chased into the east. It was on the eve of going to declare that drawing of line, that Biafra, he was to Gowon himself was the one telling this story of it was to prevent the East from leaving the Union that they created the 12 states to fracture the eastern region into 3. That was how Rivers State emerged. That was how Southeastern State emerged. That Rivers State is today's Rivers and Bayelsa. That Southeastern State is today Cross River and Akwa Ibom. What was the purpose? The balance now being the East Central States, that is now the 5 Southeastern States. What was the purpose of that fracture? The Cameroonian border, they didn't want the Igbo to have any access to international border. So the Cameroonian border is bounded by the south, is that the Cross River and Akwa Ibom of today, 100%. The Atlantic waterfront is bounded by the river state that is now Rivers and Bayelsa. All in the bid, it was the British organizing all of this. And that is why the story you are going to hear of what will happen to the UK, the blood of all these people that are being slaughtered in Nigeria across these last 55 years will get back to the head of the British Crown and all of those who subscribe to that evil. And so, I'm just explaining to us, when you hear constitution, it's not that document that is painted green, white, and green. It is your land that is now part of Nigeria that we are discussing. Constitution means to constitute. Ijo land is now a portion of a Nigeria that can be managed under that title deed. That's what it is. And your signature is put there as the one who agreed with the rest of Nigeria to have it the way it is, as one political union in which your economic assets now belong to an illicit federal government. Illicit because the federation collapsed. Nigeria became a unitary state from that 1967 that Gowon fractured into 12 states, which went on fracturing by decree upon decree until it became 36. He did the first. Murtala Mohammed came in 1976. He became 19. Then who was it that came again and added some? Abacha, I think it was Ibrahim Bangida that came, did his own. Then Abacha completed it. Where were the officers from the rest of Nigeria? These people had only one plan. That plan of Uthman Danfodio, the first time they got here in 1804, to take the entire territory. The British disrupted them in the 1860s, and they formed a joint venture that resulted in 1914, bringing what they had each captured on the two sides. You are still in the sky looking at this one estate. Look at the map that has yellow and white on your screen. Look at that map closely again. Those 12 states, the portion in yellow is the 12 states that impose Sharia. The portion in white is the whole of the South and Middle Belt that is this alliance. The union we formed at the beginning was a secular union and a federation. You already understand the meaning of federation. In federation, you owned your sovereignty. You owned your economic assets. You contributed only a portion of your income to the upkeep of the center for the limited responsibilities the regions delegated the centers to do. It was only 15%, 15 as in 1/5 that you had to contribute. How did we then go from the federating units that owned their assets, controlled the what they did with the assets? You had your priorities for what you are going to do with what you had. That was why Awolowo could do what he did. That was why Emma could build what he built, including the Trans-Amadi in Port Harcourt, including the Budukatu Ranch, and there was electricity that served the whole of the east from Oji River, coal-fired power plant. That was the basis of electricity for everybody. Electricity that did not fail. Aba was going, Onitsha was going, Newu was going. You saw what Awolowo did in the western region because he was in control of his own assets. So he prioritized education. He prioritized housing. He prioritized all kinds of things, healthcare that brought better life for the people. All those things have now been truncated on account of the termination of those arrangements by military fiat. And who is that military? Who is that military? The military wing of the caliphate. Unfortunately for them, and that's why we are coming to speak to you now, you may look at the numbers and say, oh, we are not in millions. I'm sorry for the people who are staying in their ignorance, whether they are president or senator or politician or businessman. Anybody who is not listening to what we are saying now will be a victim, a casualty of what will happen. That constitution that tie us down, because it is that false claim that we, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having solemnly firmly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible entity, do hereby make and give unto us the following constitution. It is that false claim that makes your land, your entire land, Edo land, Ijo land, Igbo land. It is that false claim that locks you down into this entity called Nigeria, into this into this forest into this evil forest, into this union of death. And not only are you locked in here, the 68 items of exclusive list you see, the 36 states formation in which you are now exactly like the Berlin conference that divided Africa, sitting in faraway Berlin. They drew the map, they drew the lines on the paper with no reference to the people who lived in that Africa. Look at Western region of today. Look at Benin Republic. Are there no Yoruba across the border there? Is there any? If nobody stops you, you are in Yoruba land. As you cross the border, you won't even know, because the same forest. There's no river in between. Yoruba people, just because France had an interest in Berlin conference, they drew the line there. The same motive for drawing all the lines they drew across Africa. I'm sure some of you listen to PLO Lumumba, Professor Lumumba. The same motive for which they drew the lines they drew across Africa, fracturing Africa into 54 countries that amount to nothing. That is the same, strategy that brought us to being 36 states, none of which can challenge that monster called federal government. And then, in the formation of 36 states, they also added local government areas into the constitution, which they had created unilaterally. 774. Kano has 44 local government areas. Bayelsa has only 8. How did it happen? Because soldiers from the descendants of Ahmadu Bello were unilaterally, no one of your people was part of creating that structure that now make us permanent political minority. The people who are doing this are not bringing anything on the table. They are not contributing to what is being shared. But on account of being 36 states and 74 local government areas, they take 72% of everything, whether it is a license that is to be awarded, or representation at the National Assembly, or sharing of revenue. They take 72%, whether they're in government house as president or not. In that whatever is left, they now still have to share with you as government of federation. Even if Obasanjo is president, look at the number of ministers he had to appoint. Look at where they have to come from. Even if Tinubu is president, or Jonathan. Then in the place of approving money by which federal government will do anything, look at the people who are in that National Assembly, the representation. So you are a minority front and back. It is your economic assets that is being used by this criminal of an enterprise called Nigeria. The Nigeria that we agreed to be in died in 1966. The Nigeria that is there now is an impostor, a blood-sucking demon, feeding on the blood of no less than 5,000 people every day. It's because you have not died. The people who have been slaughtered in Plateau, the people who have been slaughtered in Benue, the ones who have been slaughtered in elsewhere, the ones who were slaughtered in the east before, the ones who have been slaughtered in Igo and other coastal territories, the ones who have been slaughtered in Ekiti, they are dying to feed that monster. There's no other way. There's no other way to stop that bloodshed. Is Tinubu not president now? Why are Ekiti kings being beheaded in their homeland? And they sit and swear to defend and uphold that constitution that was imposed by this enemy, tying our hands to the back. I've talked about the formation, that the 36 states and 74 local government areas that make us minority that cannot say anything. Then you come to the 68 items of exclusive list. It is on account of that 68 items, there are 68 different ropes tying you to different stakes. The Niger Delta oil and gas is just one of the 68 items that Nigeria has become the owner of on account of that constitution. There is no mechanism by which Niger Delta will recover their oil and gas or their waters or their environment if that constitution does not go down. Every day that constitution stays, the people who swear to defend and uphold it amongst you, whether they are governor or senator or House of Reps member or minister, all of them are the ones holding you hostage, tying you up for that monster to swallow you. to drink your blood. As it is for Niger Delta, so it is for the Yoruba. Every senator, every governor, every house member, including the House of Assembly, every commissioner, every council chairman that had to swear to defend and uphold that constitution in Yoruba land is the one holding you down for Fulani to behead you. Fulani already took your economic assets. Otumba already spoke about what happened in 2021. March, April. After the 90 days, I think it was in March 16th in Ibadan. Sheyi Makinde was saying, no, the federal government, please, give me, he was begging the National Assembly to allow him to mine gold. If your state is filled with gold, Oyo and Osun, but they can't take 1 ounce of it because of that constitution that puts solid minerals in the list. As it is with Osun and Oyo, so it is with the people that own the coal. So it is with the Benue that has the limestone that is allotted as concession to Dangote. Medoribe is allotted the oil and gas in one side. All kinds of people. Nobody from any of our areas is in control of any of those things. And we have education. We are moving around, going around, thinking we know where we are going. There are professors of law. Challenge them with the recording of this. Challenge anybody that is a politician, anybody that is a lawyer, anybody that should know. The men of God that are luring you to election after election under this constitution. Because what do you get from it? It is what the constitution stipulates that happens. The people you think are corrupt politicians, oh, let us go and cure corruption. These are all ignorance that they are manipulating amongst you. It doesn't matter how many PhDs you have. The constitution mandates that corruption. In section 6, subsection 6C, it absolves government of responsibility towards you. The government does not owe you any obligation in black and white for school or hospital or security or welfare, anything at all. Then it gives the heads of the executive branch the spare key to the treasury in the appropriation provisions. Section 81, 82 for the president, section 121, 122 for the governors. They can take all the money in the treasury without reference to even the legislative branch. Then at section 308, they have immunity. So, all this talk about corruption. In Nigeria, most of our people think that corruption is the problem. Oh, you know, officials are corrupt. They are wrong, dead wrong. The problem is, corruption is official. If you thought officials were corrupt, and therefore you bring them to book, where is the book? Where is the book? The book to which corrupt officials should have been brought is the constitution that is written by the beneficiaries of that corruption. The ones who are holding onto your sovereignty, onto your land, onto your rights as even human beings. Under this constitution, you are slaves. Slaves don't have any human rights. Any lawyer that tells you he's a human rights lawyer, tell him that Tony Nadi said he's a criminal that ought to be stoned to death under this constitution. All these human rights groups that are parading themselves all over the place. You are slaves. You have no rights. You have to fight and recover your sovereignty. That constitution is the mechanism by which your sovereignty is held. They call you to election and you go to answer them, meaning that you want to remain in that enslavement. You want to remain available to be killed, because back to the 68 items of exclusive list, all the economic assets, the ports, the waters, the solid minerals, whether it is coal or limestone, everything that you could call economic asset, and even the right and the power to work those assets. Somebody can seize my coal, say it belongs to him. I say, okay, wonderful. Can you sell to me? I need electricity in Aba. I need electricity in Onitsha and Nnewi. I want to buy that coal since you say it now belongs to you. The right to generate electricity is confiscated by that concession. So I have the capacity to generate my electricity, like we had built the power plant in Ojiriba that worked perfectly for decades until Nigeria put electricity generation and transmission on the exclusive list, shut down that power plant. What you saw them celebrating the other day, geometric of Back that plant has been completed since about 10 years. The gas that will power it will not get there because gas is still on the exclusive list. Only the federal government, even tomorrow morning, somebody can shut down that geometric plant from Abuja. Why would people with education and exposure be living under that kind of nonsense because of a few politicians that want to be president and governor? As it is for electricity, so it is for road, so it is for security. The arms and ammunition are on that exclusive list. You cannot touch one gun. None of your governors, because some of our people ignorantly say, oh, if only our governor can do this, form vigilante group. The gun with which you are going to set up security to enforce your own laws, only the federal government can issue. So if that federal government is the one organizing the invasion against you, what are you going to do? Which gun are you going to use? And you see Tinubu now saying, oh, give land. What is the difference between what Tinubu is saying now and what Buhari and Femi Adesina was telling us the other time? Was it not Femi Adesina that said, instead of you to be killed, give land so that you will not be killed? Was that not what Femi Adesina said on behalf of Buhari? Why is it so? Because of that exclusive list. Because of the fact that there's a federal government that is in monopoly of guns. Were you the one that signed up to that monopoly, that the enemy should have all the guns and have your economic assets and have the right to, as INEC, organize who will govern you? 68 attempts, there's nothing you are going to be able to do. There is nothing at all you are going to be able to do unless that constitution goes down. And so every single day, anybody who is doing any other thing about any of the things happening in Nigeria, whether it is corruption or insecurity or the killings or the mass impoverishment, how did we come to this mass impoverishment other than the confiscation of all economic assets, development powers? You can't farm because people have sent their own people from Mauritania and Mali and Senegal to occupy your forests, killing you and just mapping out the land. They've already shared it like promised land. And they are able to do that because there is still a Nigeria that brings them to your space. It is on account of that constitution that Fulani people can come from wherever they come and come to your village and shoot people and the heavens will not fall. They control all the armed forces. Did we not tell you a few months about almost 7-8 months ago that they've not handed over the control of the military to Tinubu? Is he commander-in-chief and they are marauding all over the place doing all of this? They have not handed that asset to him. He's not in control of the network of commands of the armory. He is not in control of the network of the chain of command over the armory. The same way Shoneko was not in control at that time. That is what this interregnum is all about. The Fulani just put this fellow there to continue what they are doing. And here he is coming to establish Ruga on their behalf. Who knows some of the other things he had agreed with them that they have not told us? Why is Kyari still in NNPC with all of what was revealed against him? He had no control over that. He had no control over the guns. If you remove crude oil and you remove gun, what is he doing as president in the place? And so, let me just report. Between the last meeting last Tuesday and today. I'm sure you have all seen what's been happening all over the place. The constitution that we have defeated, the National Assembly now say, oh, we are going to do amendment, we are going to write another constitution for you, and they are throwing all kinds of things. You saw the one in which Emeka Anyoko and this fellow called Wale Okumi that was involved with Pronaco, but when contesting election in all the years we finished Pronaco, we have a proposition on the table for how to solve this problem. Emeka Anyoko wants to call a meeting, a colloquium, on the 18th of March to now begin to scratch our heads again. Oh, what is wrong with Nigeria? Where is the future of Nigeria? So what are they going to do in that one day of colloquium that will compare with what we have done for 24 years? Are they pretending they do not know that there has been a diagnosis of this problem, there has been a prescription that is already being treated? Look at what Benjamin Kama and his co-travelers in Abuja, they want to go and write constitution. Guided by Elizabeth Bakoba. So our sovereignty now belongs to them, and we are sitting around and allowing them. The reason I sound the way I sound is not as if I can't talk to you like we are across a dining table. You will hear me. But I'm talking to you now because in the days ahead, we have defeated that constitution. I'm sure some of us watch. Is there anybody present in this meeting who watched Ayo Adebanjo on Arise TV yesterday say that we have no union? Did anybody hear it or see it?
Yes, sir.
The consequence of what Minas has done is that constitution has been defeated comprehensively. We are in the process of the decommissioning. We don't need anybody's cooperation. You can't, whatever a fake document, whatever a forged instrument confers on you as a title deed gives you nothing if the owners turn up, if the authentic owners turn up. Minas has quietly organized the owners of this entire length and breadth of land that we call Nigeria to retrieve their sovereignties by working together to take down that constitution. And what do we mean by taking down that constitution? We pull back our signature that they falsely implanted. That is what this whole process has been all about. We went house to house from one ethnic group to the other, started in the Oba's palace, the Oba of Benin's palace, because he was the secretary of the Gowon's cabinet office in the time these things were done wrong. At the time they came back from Aburi and turned everything upside down and began to kill people. Then he later retired and became the Oba of Benin. At the time we were putting this process together, Enoro leading, because Enoro on his mother's side is of that royal house. We went and sat down, said, sir, the Nigeria that is built on the blood of the innocent, is he working for Benin Kingdom now? He says no. Will you and your people be willing to become a part of how we go about taking down the monster that is occupying Benin land today? As at that time, you knew the story of the Benin girls in Italy and elsewhere. They were reigning all over Europe. What was the reason they couldn't function in Benin? Because Nigeria was occupying the space. He agreed with us and sent message to the Olu Iwori. House to house, we went from the Benin to the Sekiri, down to the Ijaw territories, down to the Anang and Efik territories, the Obom in Calabar. Each place we got to, we went to the traditional institution. They summoned a meeting of their leaders of thought. They called in their young people who were already carrying arms at the time. Quietly, we went across the length and breadth of Nigeria, including the Middle Belt, including the far north. Or how did Buhari turn up at our conference in 2005 and 6? How did Syed Abubakar that is now Sultan is supposed to turn up in that conference? People who are present in this meeting, people who are listening, who are going to listen to this recording, we are giving you specific facts of what will happen to you, what has happened already, and what will happen more. The Fulani are encircling you in that your community where you think you have governor and you have senator that will plan for you. Your senator is not on your side. Your governor is not on your side. Anybody who has sworn to defend and uphold this constitution is on the side of that enemy for the benefit they get personally. That is what you must know. The boundaries they created for you, oh, I'm River State, I'm Abia State, I'm Imo State, I'm South, I'm Southeast. Was any one of you present on the table the day they were drawing those lines? They drew those lines to divide you, to be in enmity with one another, so that they can take you out one after the other. That's how they have succeeded in doing what they are doing so far, with that instrument that lock you down, and the formations in which you cannot cooperate amongst yourselves. Everybody thinks it's his neighbor that is the problem. Ogoni thinks his job must be killed. Ishekari thinks Urobo must be exterminated. Go and see what they are doing in Warri. In Benue, you see the thief and the juku. Go and look at. We have had the privilege of inquiring into all those conflict, areas. It was in every one case. It is the Fulani with a desk in London, making sure that things are the way they are. This is what we are unraveling. This is the monster that has held the black man down. Because as long as Nigeria is in this situation, nobody's going nowhere, including the ones who are black Americans. It's because there's no country in Africa no country organized by black people that is on its feet. That's why they're being shot on the streets of United States. They amount to nothing in the eyes of the people who have organized their own society. Are they the ones that will come and recover Africa from their own bondage? What are we doing here? The Fulani with no education are the ones dictating what will happen to us, and we are parading our PhDs all around, answering all kinds of titles, professor. Let us dress back from whatever we were thinking before. Ninas has more than 350 broadcasts, each of which can liberate thousands of people if they pay attention. There's a website you can go to, www.ninasvoice.org. There's a YouTube channel, just Nina's Voice. Any 3-5 broadcasts you select, leave what you're doing for 1 hour or 2. Many of them are not more than 15 minutes. A few are up to 20 minutes. There are some that are less than 10 minutes. Just randomly select 5. Leave whatever you're doing because this could mean life or death for not only you, but hundreds of thousands or millions of people around you. Because for every day they do not know, this enemy is tiptoeing and coming closer. The day they descend on you, it doesn't matter whether you are a billionaire or you own an estate. Whatever you are, when they descend in your area, you will be just like other people. If you are unlucky, you get killed. If they stir up things in the area, you can no longer function there. That's what has happened to the Middle Belt territories they have overrun. You think they are not coming to the south? They are very much on their way. If not for what they're doing, Buhari will have led them through that. If not that God made a way for us to get to Washington and put Buhari on a head-on collision with the United States. And we did all of this, and the people who are in that danger are busy shouting obedient movement or Agbado movement. All the political parties subscribe to that constitution, including Peter Obi's Labour Party. You heard when Peter Obi started his campaign by saying that constitution is not the problem. The young people who went with him to that election, whose lives are being ruined now, who are now feeling that hunger, who are being chased out with matches and guns all over the place. If they get to know that Peter Obi knew about this matter from 2012 when he was governor in Anambra, that Chima Achebe invited everybody to come to, to come to listen to what could be done. I flew to Orlando in Florida to address our people. Peter Obi came to that meeting as governor of Anambra State. He had been knowing about this matter in this detail since that time. Why would he come out and begin to load people into a vehicle without an engine? People who are in the danger of death. It is Peter Obi that dragged us to this election more than anybody else. If not that Peter Obi was wicked enough to drag us to this election, Tinubu would not have been president. If there was no election in 2023, we won't have this madness. Look at the number of people that are dying all over the place for a problem we have solved since long time ago. Just because a few politicians want to go and make profit, and the rest of us just docile. In a situation where your land is being targeted and you are being encircled by people who are armed, who have shared the land, and they call you Abia State. You are Imolite. Let us understand that we have limited time. You know, we talked about altar call that will happen in the first quarter. That first quarter is already 12th of March. 31st of March will be the last day of that first quarter. That altar call is to separate those who stand with that constitution, who stand with the enemy, who subscribe to that constitution, from those who stand with leaners to take down that constitution. What I'm telling you now will become life and death, and it could be sudden. If Nigeria snaps ahead of when these processes begin to prevail, they are still struggling. The meeting they are going to have at the Institute of International Affairs, the Emeka Anyoku colloquium, to come and start to scratch the head 24 years after we had established who the enemy is and the instrument of that enemy. The enemy is that caliphate and their local agents, the willing tools. The instrument by which we are held down into bondage, being killed, is that constitution. The solution to the problem is to defeat both that enemy and its instrument, which is what Minas has done in legitimizing that constitution and building an alliance that isolates that enemy. Do we not see that Fulani is now being chased around by everybody because of what they are doing in everybody's space? Why is it only the Fulani that are killing in every other space? And so people didn't know this before. They say, oh, don't talk about religion, don't talk about ethnicity. But when they kill you, they are killing you because you are not Fulani. Otherwise, why are they killing in Zamfara and Katsina? Are they not Muslims there? Oh, it is a jihad. Let us all join hands. We Christians. No. Why are they killing the Hausa Muslims in Katsina and Zamfara and all those places? So it is an ethnic agenda wearing the garment of religion. But the alliance of all of us who are victims of that invasion, victims of that enslavement, victims of that conquest invasion, armed with the constitution that was defeated, they stand no chance. There's no meeting we need to have with them. We only need to stand in our space by enlightening ourselves, connect with this information, and we can turn the whole thing upside down, and without anybody firing at any one of us. There's nothing I've said here that I've not said on national TV, attend to the face of the whoever is president. Are we not the ones accusing them of treason now? Is it not treason for them to topple our sovereignty and sign, to swear every 4 years to defend and uphold it, pointing guns at us, holding on to our economic assets, and then our own kinsmen join them? They sit in Abuja, sharing money in trillions, and people are dropping dead on the streets of Ibadan and Abeokuta. So we have a responsibility. Let us put aside whatever we were thinking before, whatever we were told before, let's put it aside and use the education we have to interrogate what is in black and white. There's nothing I've said now that is not written and presented in a formal way, both inside Nigeria and outside Nigeria. This matter has gone all the way to UN Security Council. This matter has gone into the chambers on Capitol Hill where the senators decide. The person speaking to you now had been inside those places discussing with the very people who have to deal with it. The US and the UN have done their part by sending a rapporteur mission as far back as 2019 that declared our constitution as pressure cooker for injustice. If you doubt me, get on Google now and search Agnes Callamard to see what the international, the stakeholders, the ones who will come to separate the fight if it becomes blue helmet situation. UN peacekeeping, because that's where it's going. That's where it's going. There's an urgency to it, very serious urgency. Very, very serious urgency. The ones, anybody who knows how to reach any member of the parliament in Abuja should take the broadcast in which we address them and send to them. They are committing treason against the rest of us by holding on to the constitution we have rejected as basis of union, the constitution that makes us slaves in our homeland, because they are sharing money with those people. When things snap, because it could suddenly snap, we have already instructed those who will become the mob, the ones who are current victims, the ones who are being chased around now with hunger and killing. If something breaks down, if Nigeria breaks down the ways progressing to, the enemy number one will be anybody who will be counted on the side of that constitution. Whether you were doing political party, whether you have sworn to defend and uphold that constitution before, or you are planning to swear by going to be in political party, because all the political parties subscribe to that. There's no difference whatsoever between PDP and APC and Labour Party and ABGA and all the other parties. They all subscribe to that constitution. And so, when things will snap, there will be only one dividing line. Are you on the side of that constitution, or you're on the side of Ninas that want to take it down? Your life will depend just on that. And it's not for people, for we in this meeting to come and determine. It is the mob that will use the formula that they have already been given. When you see that video, when you see that broadcast dealing with that, we call it the battle line. Just type battle line. The moderators can help with the full title. If you go on YouTube and type battle line, you will see the broadcast in which we instructed those who become the answers of tomorrow, those who become the mob, the angry mob that will have to rescue themselves from these wicked operators of Nigeria under this constitution. They will be the one to determine. It's not this one speaking that will determine, because I will not be in Lafenwa. I will not be in Otanja. I will not be in Borokiri. The day the mob will come upon you for being on the side of that constitution, for swearing to defend and uphold the enslavement, for being in support of the Fulani conquest going on, because that will be the weight of the offense you have committed if you have ever sworn to defend and uphold that constitution, whether as council chairman or senator or governor or former minister, except you already identify with them now that constitution has to be taken down. If you have not yet, and the trouble begins, you will not have the opportunity to explain to them that you are planning to. Anybody who knows anybody that needs to know, home and abroad, because the ones overseas can reach their friends at home to tell them that this is now become a matter of life and death. We must go to transition right now. That's the only thing we can do with this inconclusive election of 2023. you can see that the Supreme Court defied the Constitution. There's a requirement for 25% that was not met. The Supreme Court waived it, the executive waived it. So they have abandoned the Constitution on the street to die. You cannot continue to bind my hand and leg with that Constitution while you refuse to use it when it can bring us a different outcome. Our position would not have been different if P2B had been sworn, because we then say, under which Constitution? Which Nigeria? To govern who? That you swear to defend and uphold my enslavement with a forged instrument? That will have been the discussion between we and P2B now if they say he won. So there's no difference between any of them. The only thing that will solve this problem is for them to come down from their high horse or high horses so that we can go to a transition. Let us accept that we have not made any constitution. Let us suspend every talk of election or wielding of power under this current fraud and go to transition. We are willing to accommodate a transition arrangement that still keeps them in nominal governance position. We are not asking them to leave government house now, but if they don't come in good time to take advantage of what this 24 years of hard work, if they don't come in good time, the mob will explain the rest to them. They either surrender unconditionally to this proposition, this 5-point proposition that took so much to arrive at, that will save the lives of 200 million people that are now in danger. They don't come to 1% of that number, but they think they become more important than everybody because they sit in faraway Abuja. Abuja does not produce any of those monies they share. The owners of the, so that's why we started with maps. We put map on the ground. Everybody will stand on their father's plot. The constitution that prevented them from touching gun is what was defeated. So guns will be in their hand. The economic assets that they couldn't touch before, the constitution was the one that took it. They will take over, they will take back those, they don't need anybody's permission even today to take back those economic assets. Get the guns and ask everybody else, anybody they don't invite to dress back. So the people sitting in Abuja are going to discover that everybody has turned their back to that Abuja, asserting their right to self-determination in keeping with the dictates of their sovereignty. The only thing they need to be able to do all of that is that there is still a Yoruba land occupied by Yoruba people that has not been dislodged. That's all they require. To take back their land in full and decide what they do with their sovereignty. If they want to go into fresh union with anybody else, of course. But if they decide they want to clean up their house for a while before discussing that in 5 years' time, like Gideon Oka suggested to the ones he expelled, that is what it will be. We are in a position to get this thing done in the first half of 2024. For every day we postpone it, it will be because our ignorance and stupidity is keeping us from saving ourselves from clear and present danger. I stop here. Thank you.